Nick Xenophon you guys look as though you've all had enough, so I'll keep it brief. This budget makes you feel like a kid whose birthday was yesterday. It's going to be a long time before anything good happens. I am concerned that there isn't an emphasis on the health aspect of it, on preventative health. You have a situation where the government is collecting $5 billion in tobacco excise, extra tobacco excise in the next 4 years, but is only spending an extra $28 million on an advertising campaign. Not enough emphasis on mental health, preventative health, and there's a real concern. There's a meanness in the budget for our Maralinga veterans, for our nuclear test veterans, where the government is finally, after 7 years, acting on recommendations to the Clark Review to give a little bit extra for pensions, but the government is still holding back in providing lump sum compensation for nuclear test veterans, unlike other countries such as France, China, Russia and the US, and I think it's pretty disappointing.
Don't you reckon it's fair enough to prioritise a return to surplus, even if that makes it difficult for the government to offer money for some of those other worthy projects? Don't you think that the surplus should come first?
Look, I think we can put it in context. Firstly, I think the Australian public Australian people are now as interested not just in the headline figures, but in the line-by-line figures. They want to make sure that there is value for money spent on projects. And I think that they've seen that recently with their concerns about the insulation program and the schools building program. They need to see that the money is being spent wisely. And I think it's fair enough to say you ought to, for the cost of tens of millions of dollars, it's important that those veterans are looked after. There's only 2,500 left. And I think that is an indictment on us as a nation not to spend a bit of money in relation to those. When it comes to the issue of water, I welcome an extra $100 million in water buybacks of the already accelerated water buybacks, but the government, I don't think, has heeded the warnings and the recommendations of the Productivity Commission about the billions of dollars that's been earmarked for infrastructure in terms of being spent wisely, in terms of taxpayer dollars. So that's disappointing. I don't think the government has listened to the experts in relation to that.
Australians on youth allowance and youth starts seem to be missed out yet again. Do you think social inclusion should be more of a priority for the government in this budget?
A compromise has been reached on the whole issue of youth allowance. Obviously it could have been better, but I thought in the end it was the right thing to do in terms of moving forward so people would miss out. Obviously social inclusion is important, but I also think it's important that we ensure that the quality of the spend is adequate. And I think there's a real concern that we haven't spent money wisely in the past, in the recent past, and it's important that money isn't wasted. And in the context of a strong economy, we need to make sure that we don't have that waste and missed opportunities.
Do you think that social inclusion is a matter of wasting money?
Oh, absolutely not. My reference to wasting money was in relation to the whole issue where money has been wasted on the insulation bundles, in relation to the schools building program, where some school buildings have been built at 3 or 4 times the commercial rate. That's the sort of thing that I think taxpayers are worried about. So I think what taxpayers are concerned rightly not only about the quantity of expenditure of particular budget lines, but also the quality of that expenditure.
Senator, are you concerned that the mining industry has said they'll defer $9 billion worth of investment because of the resources super profits tax?
Well, of course you're concerned about any assertions that there'll be billions of dollars spent less in investment. I think the key issue with the resource rent tax or the so-called super tax is this. Can the industry afford to pay it without killing the goose that lays the golden egg? And I think that's the key issue. So the assertions of the industry need to be tested against assertions of government in relation to this, and I'm looking forward to sitting down with government and with the industry to test those assertions.
Have you sat down with the industry at all yet to go over their concerns? Do you think that this should be the subject of a lengthy Senate inquiry, for instance?
Look, I don't know about lengthy, but it needs to be thorough. You can be thorough without it necessarily being lengthy. So I think it is important, and I think we need to get it right, and also to look at the whole issue of transitional arrangements so that there isn't a short, sharp shock to the industry that scares the industry offshore. But I think it's important that we look, those assertions need to be tested. I'm looking forward to sitting down with the Treasurer in his office to go through that, because we don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg, but the government is confident that it can raise this tax without impacting on the viability and the future investments of the industry, and I need to hear from the industry as well. Thank you.
Thank you.